Hello and good afternoon. It's Dave Shadrick again with another Calamity News and Politics podcast, videocast thingamabobby. And today I'm going to talk about climate change. Now, I know that there's some controversy, but I'm just going to be straight up with you. I get my information from NASA, and 97% of all scientists in the world agree with NASA's findings on climate change. So I'm not going to debate anybody over the 3% that disagree and who are mostly fringy scientists. You can believe whatever you want to believe because I know that there's a whole lot of people out there, and I call them auto-contrarians. And by auto-contrarians, what I mean is that it doesn't matter what the position is. If there's a financial benefit to them not to do it, they automatically will come out against it, right? It isn't anything real. They just are automatically contrary to it. And then, of course, there are the people who are into conspiracy theories and genuinely believe that there's something up behind that, when I can actually get more behind those people than I can the auto-contrarians. But still, there's just too much evidence around us that even if you don't believe the scientific proof, you just really kind of have to open your eyes. And this really isn't a liberal or conservative thing. I know that liberals tend to be branded as tree huggers and conservatives are like, screw the earth. But I disagree. I know people on both sides of the borders. As a matter of fact, not here in the United States, but in Europe, the Green Party is not a liberal movement. It's a conservative movement brought about by the farmers in Europe to save their crops from, climate change and pollution and things. So over there, it's a little bit different. You're not voting for a liberal necessary when you're voting for environmentalism, and that's the way it needs to be here in America. It doesn't matter if you're a liberal or conservative. This just is a good idea overall. And of course, let's just talk about some of the consequences of us not doing something. And again, we know that there's more hurricanes than we've seen before, and that they get worse and more severe every year, and that they really were looking at what they were going to name hurricanes when they ran out of the 26 names this year. So think about that kind of a consequence. And then, of course, the Midwest floods all the time, folks. And it's just gotten worse. When you think about the fact that it's still flooding, despite all of these plans to work the rivers to stop the flooding, and they still can't stop it, it's because it continues to magnify and get a little bit worse. And then right now, having lived through the fires here in Oregon, where I didn't just have to wear a mask for coronavirus, I wore a mask because I couldn't breathe in the smoke. It was so bad. Literally looking out the window, you could see swirls of smoke all over downtown Beaverton, which was hundreds of miles from the actual fire. It was a hellscape. That's the best way to put it. But the one that concerns me most is what they call the ice slippage. We have a couple of ice shelves that are out over the ocean right now, where the warm water underneath them is melting, and they're going to drop here in the next couple of years. And when they do, they're going to raise the ocean level significantly. I'm reading up to 15 inches. That's not something you want to see in New York or New Orleans or Los Angeles or anywhere that's on the coast. It's going to be very, very unpleasant. And then all of these other weather features are going to continue to get more frequent and much more severe. So I'm not really sure what to say other than environmentalism is going to help us a lot with some of the terrible things that we're facing right now. And, why even deny it? Who cares? What if it isn't real? Does that matter? No, because environmentalism is still something we need to look at. I can't think of it. Even people who are against climate change, or they say that things aren't going on that are, affecting the environment, they'll look at you and they'll talk about the good old days when they were kids, and I'm one of them, right? I remember when there were birds everywhere. And Calamity, who's 15 years older than me, says, I haven't seen bird flocks because the real big bird flocks were when she was a kid. So we have this diminishing view of what a lot of nature is. So just because you think things are okay, you don't have the perspective of older people. Or if you're older, what the hell's wrong with you? Do you remember all the time we spent in school in the 60s and 70s watching those films? And they warned us about pollution and everything, and everywhere you looked there was anti-pollution. The famous Iron Eyes Cody commercial where he's got the tear in his eye as he's going through the riverways of America choked with trash. People seemed to be aware of it, and they were, more into trying to make things better. And so even my friends, like I said, who are, they just don't believe any of this, will say things like, it used to be so much greener. There used to be so many more fish in this lake. And all of those things should be very worrying to us all. So that, just be nice and go with it, It's not going to cost you any money, so quit it. And I think I'm just going to give you one flinking reason why you should think about environmentalism in terms of politics, all right? And this is such a horrible example, I don't feel I need anything else. And that is simply oil equals terrorism. Every time you change the oil in your vehicle, every time you pump gas into it, you're sending money to Al-Qaeda, you're sending money to ISIS, you're sending money to the Syrian regime, because they've got tons of oil. Do you think because we boycotted it that Turkey isn't buying it and then selling it to us? Of course they are. ISIS will sell it for 25% of the price than anybody else will, because they need the money to fund their terrorism. Al-Qaeda, same way. They got hold of the oil money, then they can fund their activities. So when I see some guy in a giant truck belching black smoke out, I just think, hey, thank you. All of my veteran friends in the military who were killed in Afghanistan and in Syria, well, we thank you a lot. Thank you for bringing death to our soldiers. And the fact that, the idea that you would terrorize someone for actually driving a green vehicle, it's just ridiculous. So just keep that in mind. Of all the different pollutants out there, just this one thing, and the one example is you are supporting terrorism when you are not supporting the environment. So knock it off. Thank you. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the benefits of doing this. All right. So being from Oregon, I remember when there were some really strict environmental consequences involving the spotted owl in the timber industry. And everybody was really freaking out because there was a lot of money in the timber industry. Well, to be honest with you, now there's a ton of money in the tourism industry. Plenty of jobs. A lot of the logging jobs were replaced by that. And a lot of the logging towns in Oregon here have built up their charm. They're filled with antique stores, and they've got fancy bric-a-brac on the buildings, and cool restaurants to kind of attract you in. And people come all over the place to the wineries that didn't exist when we were doing logging, because why grow grapes? You're making money taking the trees down. So you've got all kinds of other jobs that come with being environmentally sound. New technology for cars, new technology with solar panels. I realize that a lot of the solar panels are made in China, but folks, the Chinese don't come over and steal the jobs installing those solar panels. All of those jobs and doing the installations belong exclusive to Americans. So, being environmentally sound on that front means that people go to work, and we are going to lose oil field jobs. But I lived in Texas for probably as long as I lived in any other state in my life, and I can tell you this. My ex-wife's husband was in the oil field. All of my stepsons went into the oil field because they made $26 an hour. And they all worked probably a half of their lives, because the other half, the oil field, is not up and running. So these are things that you have to think of. That, you know, there's other things that are out there. And then, of course, another benefit for all of you conservatives out there is that you're going to hear a lot less whining from liberals. If everything is going well environmentally, then you don't have to listen to people on the news whining and yelling and shouting in the streets on that issue. So all you Trump supporters out there, become environmental supporters too, and put down the liberals who are annoying you on the evening news by making the world a better place. And then finally, I guess I'm just going to say, as humans, and the top of the food chain, the top of the intelligence scale, we are the guardians of our resources. And for us to just exploit them is ridiculous. We're the stewards. To say we in America shouldn't try to stop what the pollution and things that we can because, the third world isn't paying attention. Well, good for the third world, If we don't have any reason to use fossil fuels, then the third world has no reason to use them. If we're using green products, the rest of the world follows. If the United States sneezes, the rest of the world catches cold. And all we have to do is lead by example. Well, I guess I'm done railing at the world for this week. Thank you for tuning in and listening to this broadcast of the video cast. We're going to try that one. I got it through without bubbling it up. And we'll see you next week. Have a great day.